The Buckeyes are on the field every day warming up for 2024, and lucky for us, these two are on the field just about every day, past and going into this week as well. Buckeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football, and just another great example of why I say, please subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. So we're here on a Monday because Tony, Steve, they're going to be at Buckeye practice all week, interviewing players and coaches, and of course, checking out the 24 edition. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing great.
All right.
Doing well.
Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Huddle, Buckeye Weekly's the podcast. Tony, your evaluations over the weekend. You had to work a weekend here.
We work about 25 weekends a year, 40, whatever. I lose count. But we were back at practice again this past weekend, and practices 3 and 4, the first 2 practices with shoulder pads of camp. The team has the day off today. They're checking into the hotel today, which is the other great Ohio State media tradition of standing around and shooting photos and videos of the players as they enter the hotel, and as regular guests of the hotel wonder what famous person is staying. Is this Taylor Swift? Is she at this hotel? Is this who is here? Because why is all this paparazzi here? So that's today, and it's tradition. So we'll all be there. But I think a couple of takeaways from practice. I think Will Howard is clearly the number one right now, and it's just confirmed that I believe he will be the starter. Carnell Tate has been fantastic. I think we don't maybe talk about him enough. He's continued to make some really good catches and really strong against really, really good coverage. And we know the secondary is pretty good. I think the offensive line has been interesting. That I think you're seeing Seth McLaughlin is clearly the starting center. Carson Hinsman been battling an illness. He missed the first practice. Ryan Day said it was with an illness. He's been playing guard. And right now it's like Luke Montgomery has been playing. He's been the number 2 center. So they've moved him even further inside. And it seems like they're trying to get him ready to be the backup for Seth, and Carson is going to battle with Tegra Shabola at guard, and we'll see how that shakes out. But that's just a handful of things I've seen. I've been impressed with the freshman running backs as well. Sam Williams-Dixon has had a really good couple of days. James Peoples is always impressive. Sonny Styles has been with the ones almost exclusively at will, and CJ Hicks has been with the twos and getting some time with the ones when they go to a 3 linebacker set. Jermaine Matthews has been outstanding at the number 2 nickel behind Jordan Hancock. Had a pick 6 of Julian Sayin, I think, on Sunday. And they're just some of the things that stand out, and it's kind of a disappointing practice when Jeremiah Smith doesn't do anything amazing, and that was the case when I was watching yesterday.
Steve, what did you see?
I would say a lot of the same things. I think, my take on the offensive line is seems like every series it's a different 5 guys kind of mixed and matched in different roles. And I think Hinsman has also repped some at center, so he's kind of involved there too. But, to me, they are trying to find combinations that work well together. And I don't think I think 3 of the jobs are pretty well set with Simmons at left tackle, Jackson at left guard, and Fryer at right tackle. And it's just trying to figure out that combination at center and right guard that is going to suit them and do the best that they can. I think I'm very impressed with the overall depth of the team. I can't think of one area of the team that is deficient. That is where you just sit there and say, man, how are they going to make it through the season with this at this position? There's nothing like that. And I made a comment to, I think it was Joey Kaufman of the Columbus Dispatch, and Bill Rabinowitz, his partner with the Dispatch. I said, this could be a year where the Pat Hand just walks, just runs the table. And that kind of, it flew over Joey's head. He's like, Pat Hand, what does that mean? It's like, in 5-card draw, you're standing pat. You like the 5 cards that they dealt you, and you're standing pat. You've got what you need to win it all. And I'm not convinced that they can't win it all with what they've got. So I think it's a definite possibility. I think that they're going to be in the running for it. And I can't really think of a major deficiency on this team. The only thing that I keep coming back to is they were working on two different fields. And part of that, they were doing some 7-on-7 on the field to my left, where Patrick Murphy was watching for us. And then I was watching the pass rush drills on my right. And I'm also like, kind of my head on a swivel, standing between them, watching the 7-on-7, jotting it down, and watching the pass rush. I think the offensive line held its own by and large, but there were a few plays where the defense got the better of the offense during that drill, which is going to happen. Say they run 50 plays, the offense is going to stalemate them probably 30, 35 times. The defense is going to just beat them right off the jump probably 5 or 10 times, and the others you could, say, a draw, whatever. So I think between that drill and then watching some 11-on-11 where quarterbacks, Devin Brown most notably, is backed up in the pocket and throwing off his back foot kind of under duress, and you hate to see that. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. And he did float a ball out there that was picked in one of those things under duress. And so, is the pass protection 100% locked down where it needs to be? No, but also consider who they're going against. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Salik Williams, Kenyatta Jackson was fabulous yesterday coming off the edge. Mitchell Melton looked pretty good. So they got some dudes over there on the defensive line, and that's making life a little bit more difficult for the offense. But we can get into some of these different positions and more in-depth thoughts. But that was maybe the overarching only thing that kind of gave me just the slightest bit of pause. And we know how bad it was last year against Missouri, how they didn't play great against Michigan. But I think it's going to be better than that. But I want to still see them take that next step to where it's locked down.
Yeah, and I don't think we saw the offensive line with the actual ones yesterday, because they were split with Austin Siereveld was with the first group, and he's going to be a backup at guard. And Donovan Jackson and Josh Simmons were with one group, and Josh Fryer and was with another group. So it's never on Saturday they had some moments where it was like the full five, but I don't know that we saw much of that yesterday. And so that helps explain why there are some rough moments, other than the fact that the defensive line is pretty good. And they want to see, because they're going to run into that this year where somebody has to go out for a play. So Austin Siereveld, you go in. George Fitzpatrick, you go in, where they have to be able to handle that. And you get some snaps with guys that you aren't normally with, with Zen Mahalski playing next to Donovan Jackson, stuff like that, where it wouldn't be the first time they're doing that. So that's what a lot of that was yesterday, and what it has been through the split fields. Now, I think Ryan Day said after day one, when we talked to him, they're going to start to go away from the split fields because they need to just really hone in on who is going to be their two quarterbacks that they're really focused on. And I'm interested to see how that battle actually between Julian Sain and Devin Brown works out.
So last season, I got to say that I probably watched, as I typically do, a great majority of Alabama's SEC games. I don't remember Seth McLaughlin having snapping issues. And I pretty much watched the Auburn and Georgia games wire to wire. And then suddenly in the Rose Bowl, he has these issues. So I'm assuming he's been asked about this and what happened that night and whether that's something he needs to work on.
That's just it was a communication issue, basically, him and Jalen Milroe. And so, he's been fine. There's one high snap that has been publicized, and he had to go run a lap for it. But other than that, I haven't seen anything bad from him. I have not seen him lose a one-on-one rep. And, I saw him each of these 2 days stone Ty Hamilton. So he to me, he's the guy there. And I don't know that it's actually close at this point. And he's done everything that they've asked. And we've seen some bad snaps from a handful of centers, and I'd say he's been by far the most consistent. And it's not really a concern to me.
Ryan Dawes showing up. We appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you so much for the contribution. If you had to choose one linebacker to have his hand in the dirt to get after the quarterback this season, CJ Hicks or Sonny Styles, or do you even think they need to do anything that exotic?
I don't know about hand in the dirt. I think that, if Sonny Styles is moving up there, he's probably going to just be a stand-up outside linebacker. I don't recall. I tell you what, Cody Simon came on a blitz yesterday and created havoc for him. I don't know if he got there before the ball was released or not, but I think he can be valuable in that role. And Sonny Styles certainly has got the agility and he gets there. He can tip the pass. He's so big. He can get his hands up in the air and tip the pass or intercept it. And, no one's going to stop him going the other direction once he gets his hands on the ball. So to me, those two in particular, and maybe then Hicks, I suppose, just from what I saw, I saw both those guys make some inroads in that regard yesterday. As an overall thought, I would like to see more turnovers. We asked Jim Knowles about it. They only had 11 turnovers in a 13-game season last year on defense, 4 fumbles and 7 interceptions. Now, they were in the top 10 nationally with touchdowns on defense, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what the exact number was, but they did have some defensive touchdowns last year. So that was good, but not many turnovers. And it's got to be something, that's a team thing where one person, makes the hit and somebody else recovers the fumble. One person pressures the quarterback and somebody else gets the interception. Yesterday, Julian Sayin took a quick drop and tried to throw a quick pass to Jeremiah Smith, and it was Jermaine Matthews who stepped in front of the pass like a veteran and housed it. And as soon as he caught it, he put his finger in the air and he was headed. And then the whole defense went down in the end zone and celebrated. And it's not like a game where they're going to throw flags and, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? It's practice. We're going to go have a party in the end zone. And they did. So they really whipped it up. And, Julian Sayin learned a valuable lesson on that. And as I said, Brown had one where he just kind of floated it out there and overthrew his receiver. And I think Calvin Simpson-Hunt made the diving interception. Those were the only 2 picks that I really saw. I don't know on the other field when they were doing 2 fields. Pat was watching one field and I was watching the other, if there were any other interceptions on the other field. But this kind of goes back to the beginning where, and I know I'm off target here, off topic, but Howard to me has been more consistent than the others. And both in driving the ball downfield, putting it into tight windows and not turning it over, and also showed some running ability as well. So I think he's checked a lot of boxes so far through the first 4 days.
Yeah, Howard went about 80 yards on Saturday for a touchdown, or before it was blown dead on a run to the left. In terms of, CJ Hicks was playing on the line a couple of snaps on Friday, and when we talked to Jim Knowles about that, he's like, they're just looking for ways to use that will linebacker more, do more things with it, because you have some unique athletes. And he said, CJ Hicks can do that. Sonny Styles could do that as well. And as Steve said, I saw Cody Simon doing that. They played 3 linebackers for a few snaps yesterday, and Cody Simon was actually at one point with the 2s or 3s as the Sam, doing some blitzing, and that's just an interesting look to give him, because he's played Will and Mike for his entire career, throughout his entire career. This was a bit of a new look for him. But yeah, you've got guys like that. So who would you choose? This is what CJ Hicks, that's his specialty. And I think he's smaller than Sonny, but Jim Knowles has had really good success with guys rushing the passer or just creating havoc who are 6'2", 230 in the past at Oklahoma State and other places. And that's just, he's that ridiculous kind of speed guy. Go with him because I think Sonny is a more natural, solid, safe linebacker behind the line of scrimmage. On his own side of the line of scrimmage, CJ Hicks is the guy maybe you send to the opponent's line of scrimmage.
Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We are doing this on a Monday because Tony and Steve will be at practice all week and interviewing players. So please subscribe. That's why you subscribe. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. And to further Steve's point, not many turnovers caused by the defense, but those touchdowns that come to mind from me. One was key against Maryland. They were down 10-0 on the Josh Proctor pick 6, and the other was against Penn State, right? Those are the two that come to mind that were meaningful against good opponents when they needed points.
Yeah, again, few and far between. And again, defense was great. They were top 2 in scoring, top 3 in yards allowed, but like 80th or 90th in turnovers. So that's an area Jim Knowles definitely wants to do better. And again, it's a team thing. It's getting the great pass rush and letting the guys on the back end get their hands on some football. So that's what it's all about. And I want to see more of it. You need to see more of it. You need to change games early and put teams behind early and make them try and play catch-up football against this defense. It's not a good recipe, I don't think.
Are we going to talk about Michigan 17 minutes into the show? Maybe not. Tony, keep us going.
No, what was the go ahead. I lost my train of thought on something because I was responding in the chat. I'll never do that again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just kind of responding some things in the chat as well. I don't think that there's anything that you have to get too alarmed about just yet. 4 days into camp, I see people wringing their hands about McLaughlin and that Howard has been named. I mean, he hasn't been named or anything yet as the starting quarterback. It just seems to me like it's going to trend that way. If everything is kind of headed the direction it's headed, that's where it's going to be. But again, as I say, I'm tremendously impressed with what I've seen from Judkins in the open field and Henderson. They are both primed and ready to have a great season. And the 2 young freshmen, James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon, the moment does not seem to be too big for either one of them. We'll see how they handle fumbling issues if that ever rears its ugly head. I don't really think that it has yet, but for freshmen, ball security can sometimes be a major concern. And we'll see how those guys deal with that. But so far, so good. I've been impressed. Wide receiver, we know what Igbuka can do. We think Smith's going to be great. I agree with Tony that, now he needs to deliver at a high level every day. And I think Brian Hartline's coaching him hard to get him to be at that level. But to me, Tate has been one of the unqualified success stories so far. Brandon Ennis caught a long touchdown pass yesterday. That was good to see. Jaden Ballard made an amazing play yesterday where the DB was all over him, with his back to the ball, and the ball was underthrown. So Ballard reached over the DB, tipped it up to himself, kind of set it like a setter at volleyball, and then snatched it out of the air with one hand and tucked it away for like a 40-yard gain. And that was one heck of a play. And we know he can make the hard-to-make catches. Can he make the easy ones? That's the big question there. So, and then you've got Bryson Rogers is a guy who pops up every now and then. David Adolph, a walk-on. They've got a really good-looking freshman, number 84, Dorian Williams from Cincinnati Princeton. I don't know anything about him, but I guess he's a walk-on, and he could play a lot of places, it looks like to me. So that's a good find. And Mylan Graham, the true freshman, he stood out to me the first 2 or 3 days that I was there as well. I missed the Saturday practice I was there Thursday, Friday, missed Saturday, and then was there for yesterday. And we got to see maybe 30, 40 plays of 7-on-7 and 40, 50, 60 plays of 11-on-11. I mean, it was a lot in one day to see all that and to gain some pretty good insight into who's making plays. Again, the defense was not tackling guys to the ground, not being overly aggressive with ball carriers, just kind of, thudding up with them, giving them a hit, not trying to probably the best violence I saw was when Sean Judkins got loose on a run on my field, and poor freshman Jalen McLean came over to kind of thud him up, and Judkins said, "Nope, not thudding me up, bro," and just as Bill Rafter would say, with the discard. I mean, it was he sent him sprawling, So you're telling me I can't tackle him, but he can knock me straight to the ground with his stiff arm. Next time I'll be better prepared. That was one. And one tough note yesterday toward the end of practice, JT Tuimoloau went down. He was down on the field for about 2 minutes where he eventually got up, stood up, walked to the sideline. I'm not sure what happened with him, and hopefully he'll be walking under his own power, walking into the team hotel today. And I think we get a briefing tomorrow with somebody, and we'll see if we can, we'll be around practice enough to see if he's coming off the practice field or, where things are at with JT tomorrow. But that was one somber note yesterday, although it looks like everything was good. So.
And I'll just say we will talk to Chip Kelly and the quarterbacks tomorrow. We won't talk. We generally don't get to talk to anybody at check-in day today at the hotel. Ryan Day said after the first practice, he'd like to name a quarterback within the first 2 weeks. He said like 7 to 10 days, then the first 2 weeks, which would coincide with perhaps I'm going to assume the first scrimmage, which will be on Saturday, that's the end of the second full week of practice. But then we don't talk to anybody after that until the following Thursday. So we might hear something then, which would be the 15th when we talk to the head coach and both coordinators. So maybe then, which would be a pretty early announcement. That would be even earlier than Justin Fields or CJ Stroud. I believe they were both around like the 18th or 19th of August. But I also don't think Ryan Day wants to go into a situation like he had last year. And I just wrote about this on BuckeyeHuddle.com about the quarterbacks. And you can't, as he said, you can't force it. Somebody actually has to win it. But Will Howard's been playing pretty darn well. And that running threat, he gives them some, it's an interesting long speed. It takes a little while for him to get to full speed. But then when he gets there, he'll surprise you. I mean, he's got 3 rushes in his career of over 70 yards, including one against Texas.
Okay, so let's stay right there. I don't know why this comp never came to me before, and it may be way off, but I don't think it's way off. So you guys have seen all these guys play quarterback at Ohio State, and you saw them in practice. We've all seen them, of course. They actually televised the game. So yes, we all get to see them eventually, but you guys see them in practice, and I'm sure the years run together in the evaluations, but maybe you remember a wow moment here from Justin Fields or a CJ Stroud or somebody of that caliber. But now when I think Will Howard, I think JT Barrett. See JT Barrett?
I think with a bigger JT Barrett, with I'd say a bigger arm, a stronger arm, because I had somebody else asking me like, well, when you compare his speed, because you go 80 yards or whatever it was in practice, and immediately people are like, oh wow, is it Justin Fields or is it JT Barrett? I'm like, it's more JT Barrett. And you remember the 86-yard run against Minnesota took a little while, but also JT Barrett was 2,000 career yards rushing at Ohio State, and he had several, probably over a dozen 100-yard rushing games in his time. So I'm thinking they're not going to run him as much as that. And when Ryan Day talks about running the quarterback, he compared it to, or somebody compared it to the way CJ Stroud ran against Georgia, and is like, yeah, like that. which is I don't think that's. I'm not going to say Ryan Day is wrong, but I don't know how much reading of keeping the read CJ did in that game. I'm trying to think back in terms of like that was a bunch of scrambling and keeping plays alive. Whereas this year they're going to be doing a lot of reading. So much of the practices that we've seen, almost everything like has a read attached to it in terms of a quarterback could keep it. There's so much RPO going on right now as well. So the aspect of the quarterback running is very much alive in this, or the possibility of him running is very much alive in this, because on so many plays they could keep it, whereas they didn't do that with Kyle. It was not a threat. It was not a threat with CJ Stroud. So now that it is a threat, a defense has to worry about it. It doesn't mean you have to run Will Howard 15 times like you would JT Barrett, but you might run him 7 and it might be really effective.
Yeah, I agree. I think Howard's going to be just fine in that role. What I saw yesterday, what I love is the timing. I mean, after they've run the backs and thrown the ball and whatever, and they've worn the defense down, now is the time to strike them with that quarterback run. And I think Ohio State's done a wonderful job when they've had quarterbacks who are willing to do that with that weapon. So, I'm eager to see how Howard can impact the bottom line with his feet this season. And again, with Henderson and Judkins, I don't know that he's going to need to do it a whole lot by design, but we'll see as they get into it. And there'll be time and place where it has to happen, and he'll get the job done, I think.
So I bring that up because I think it's an apt comp. I think they're comparable players. Again, Tony pointed out the differences, and any Buckeye fan with an ounce of integrity should have huge amounts of admiration for JT Barrett and what he did for this program. Absolutely. He was first rate all the way. Exceptional guy, exceptional teammate, leader, all of that. However, we do understand his limitations, and we do know the goals of this team. And so I bring it up in that aspect as well, in terms of Will Howard getting to the promised land. So.
And I think go back to the 2016 bowl game, playoff game, I guess, right, against Clemson, when they had no concerns. Clemson's defense had no concerns about JT Barrett throwing on them, and that was pretty eye opening when we talked to them beforehand, and they're like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." And you saw they went out and shut out the Buckeyes. So it's like there was a limit to what he could do, which I think is what gets remembered a lot, rather than all of the things that he did do. Although now, the wins against Michigan are starting to rise back up because they've been not as prevalent in recent history for obvious reasons.
Guys, there has been a sudden surge in conversations about how often you delete text messages. This has become some kind of conversation piece out there. I don't know why this is anyone's business, but of course we know. 52 of those coming in from Connor Stallions, and Sharon Moore thought it necessary. Not just this is my own personal preference or maybe my lack of organization, but hey, if people leave my kind of grid of friendship or business contact, they just get lost in the phone. I could probably look up somebody from 18 years ago on my phone and they're still there because I don't just get rid of them. They're there. But some people are a little bit more regimented about deleting people off of their phone. Sharon Moore happens to be in that category, and he does it immediately just for the sake of organizational purposes, I guess.
Or, get out ahead of the posse, take your pick. We've talked about this issue forever on this show, and I'm sure we will until the NCAA resolves it. But, they really don't have a leg to stand on. And, their behavior is consistent with somebody who knew and knows that what they were doing was not proper. And if, the ESPN report is to be believed, they sent somebody to what, 50, 52, 58 different college football games to scout in person and under their auspices, and somehow had the travel, reimbursed one way or the other through the quote Michigan slush fund, or however it was done. And, we're supposed to believe that this guy was acting alone, and they acquiesced to all of his information. And, it astounds me. I say this every time this comes up. These guys were college coaches for years. Nobody that they've ever come in contact with before or since has ever had a hit rate of 80-90% correct calls on this stuff. And that they think that it all came together because he watched, the first series of the game and could immediately decipher from standing there in the stadium, oh, this is going to be a run. Oh, this is going to be a pass. No, he was already telling you what was coming on the first play of the game. That, he already knew. How did he know? I don't know. How do you think he knew? I don't know. So whatever. People, they're going to get what they deserve, and it's going to be, when the day comes, it's going to be something to see. And Ohio State's lived through this, and Michigan's going to live through it too. So that day's coming.
I will say regarding the text messages, regarding the draft of the NOA, is the only infraction there was not giving them forward, was trying to hide them initially, and then nothing seems to have come from them getting the text. So I think that's good for Sharon Moore, and that they did get those texts eventually, and nothing came from them as far as we know. Now that may be changing. Maybe that gets added to the draft. I don't know. But as it's relayed right now, the text messages are fine. It's just the trying to hide it. And it's interesting that was like one of the first pieces of that article. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that's very interesting. And we went for like an hour and a half yesterday live talking about it. But perhaps you've got 7 different people getting level 1 or whatever allegations, but 4 of your 10 assistant coaches, your head coach, and other people that are implicated in this in some way, and in other ways as well. My thing when talking to Michigan fans about this, I think you should provide, and we can do it right now in the chat, just provide a Turing test with them. Just answer this question, yes or no. Was there cheating inside the Michigan football program? And if they say no, then these are not people that are interested in having an honest conversation. If they say yes, then we can go on and continue to discuss the impact of that, why, where, who knew, that sort of thing. But if you're saying no, there was no cheating in there, then you're a dishonest actor in this point, and there's no reason to further have a conversation with you, because none of the conversation is going to go anywhere if you won't first admit that there is wrongdoing in there. And then we can talk about, well, what's going to happen, and anything could happen, and anything meaning a whole bunch of slaps on the wrist. And but the other thing in there is the repeated aspect of this for the program, and the program being named in one of this, like the school itself is facing a level 1 violation charge because of its pattern of non-compliance within the football program. And this is something that some people are latching onto, like, hey, Michigan's only being looked at for not being forthcoming with the investigation. There's nothing in this that is about Stallions. It's just the way they reacted to that. But non-compliance means non-compliance with the rules on hand. And that could be not cheating, not doing things that are not allowed, and then also not being forthcoming. So non-compliance is breaking NCAA rules. So that is, I'm going to assume, part of the greater whole deal of this, and that involves Connor Stallions and everything else that has been part of this cheating, sign stealing scandal. So I think the school being named in there, the fact that they're already on probation, like these are serious things. And I will also say that Michigan has last year they would through back channels to Michigan media would say, hey, we're going to fight this. We're going to fight that. We're going to get a temporary restraining order on this. Every time they were faced with actually having to follow through on their legal threats, they backed down. And I see people saying that they're going to fight any kind of postseason ban or any kind of punishment that they don't feel is just. And they're not going to feel like any punishment that hurts is just, because I'm guessing a lot of people don't feel like they did anything wrong and everybody else does it. But the idea that Michigan will fight this outside of the normal confines of the NCAA or the Big Ten is laughable to me, because they've backed down every single time. They've been afforded an opportunity to go legal with this. They have backed down. And the fact that Jim Harbaugh is not going to be involved in any kind of NCAA conversation. He's already been advised by his attorney, like, this isn't going to happen. His attorney, Tom Mars, basically told the NCAA, don't even bother talking to us. It's not going to happen. So now you've also got a head coach that is kind of just former head coach. Like, I'm not dealing with this, where, kind of perhaps, and we'll see if he's leaving, just hanging his old school out to dry on this one.
Yeah, we could be in a situation in which Sharon Moore gets suspended, let's say 3 games. That seems to be the NCAA standard for this and the previous violation. And to have the head coach suspended for 3 games, or for 9 games over the span of 2 seasons, but that to have been determined that we're not going to change or alter, vacate any games for a scandal that was related to on-field cheating doesn't seem to be necessarily consistent.
No, and it doesn't. And common sense would say if you're cheating to win games, then those games should be taken away. But I'm not going to try to predict what the NCAA is going to do. Clearly, they're not happy with the situation. They've had to lick some wounds over all of this NIL stuff. So I don't know if this is going to be an opportunity for them to maybe get their pound of flesh from somebody finally. But also, I don't see this as being something that is a like revenge oriented. It's the NCAA gets pretty angry when they're trying to investigate you and you're stonewalling them and or not cooperating, and nobody. The school may be cooperating right now because they've been compelled to, but so many of the people of interest are not, and those are all, when you can't talk to the people who know where the bodies are buried, you're not, good luck finding the bodies, basically.
In trying to determine the impact of this, I find it curious that from even going back to day one, when even to the NFL level, players and coaches were asked about how much this would impact a game, the responses ran the spectrum. There was not a consensus, and you would think that there would be a fairly strong consensus that coaches would deduct, this is what was going on, this is how much it would impact our preparation or our ability to stop the other team. But that evaluation was all over the place.
Well, I would just say for any of those coaches that say, it's no big deal, why did they have signs? Why did they have signals? Why did they try to keep information from the opponent when they're playing their own games? Why not just yell the play out so that everybody hears it, put it up on the scoreboard so that everybody can see it? Why are you protecting yourself against an opponent if you don't think there would be an impact on having at least a knowledge of run or pass? That very thing alone is a huge advantage. And so for coaches to be like, for coaches or players, and there were some who said it's it's a gigantic advantage there. As you said, there's some who say, you still got to make the play. The whole you still got to make the play. It is silly to me, because you're just bypassing the fact that the other team has an idea of what's coming. Like that is the whole point. Yes, you still have to make the play, so what? This is still a thing that has been an advantage that has been gained. And so I guarantee anybody that is saying, you still got to make play, or it's no big deal, would not want to be on the other side of this. They would not want to, if they're still playing, if a defensive end, they would love to know whether this is run or pass. An offensive lineman would love to know whether, is this a zone blitz? Who's coming from where? Like, all of these things, these people would love to know. And then for anybody to poo-poo it is, again, that's dishonesty.
Mike has the $64 million question. Thank you for the contribution, Mike. If you were in charge of the investigation, what would you choose as an appropriate punishment based upon what we know?
I was muted. Okay, how about this? I don't know what is known about 2022. I assume that they were doing it in 2022, but I think you could vacate every game that they sent somebody to scout a team in person should be vacated. Okay, up through the week of the Michigan State game last year, where Michigan State got that missive from the Big Ten. Hey, you might want to be aware of this, that they've probably got all your stuff. You might want to be aware of this. Of course, here's Michigan State, a double A JV team trying to play them, and that was not going to work. Obviously, it didn't matter if they had Michigan signals; it wouldn't have mattered. They were going to lose that game. So, but maybe have them vacate everything from 22 and 23 where they scouted the opponent. Now, Connecticut or whoever they played early in the season, if there's no evidence they ever went and saw them in person, maybe let those wins stand. But anywhere where they went and saw an opponent prior to playing that team, and the opponent had no inclination that their signals had been stolen, those games should all be vacated, in my opinion. Now, that leaves everything after Michigan State and after. And I put a tweet out. I said, they beat Ohio State, and Ohio State had to come up with an alternate way to do it. Iowa, they beat them. They had to come up with an alternate way to do it. Alabama, they had to come up with an alternate way to do it. And Washington, they had to come up with an alternate way to do it. So those 4 games were probably on the up and up for the most part, 90% on the up and up. And you just have to kind of tip your cap and say, okay, they had the better team. Maybe let those games stand, I guess. It's kind of like Ohio State basketball back. They had, 25 years ago, they had a problem with a player who'd received some extra benefits. And there were seasons where he played in some games and he didn't play in some others. And they selectively vacated only the games that he played in. So, so they're left with like a record of 3-1 one season when he didn't play in 4 of those games. I think the same premise could apply here, that from Michigan State last year on, they didn't really have the full benefit of the scouting because the opponent had the ability to end around that and huddle up and messenger plays in the old way, or, whatever newfangled way they came up to do it. Everybody went into the stadium on those days knowing you've got to change how you did business, because, if you don't, they're going to pick you apart because they haven't lost. See, no one's beaten them. So, the only team that did beat them was TCU, who they didn't probably get to pre-scout. So that'd be my recipe on it. Vacate every game where they sent somebody to see a team in person before they played them, up until that Michigan State game last year.
And I've said this before, Michigan 2023 national champions, regular season record 5-7.
Yeah.
I mean, what you do with the cheap chip is your own business. The NCAA gives out the cheap chip in men's basketball. So for Louisville, that got yanked back. For this, it's the college football playoff. Bill Hancock, may he not rest in peace just yet. He's not there anymore, but they hired this military guy, to take it over. And, Kind of
That's
like
what started this mess, hiring a military guy.
hiring a military. And then Petiti, he knows all about coming in midstream and having to deal with some stuff. So yeah, maybe they'll have an opinion on it. Of course, Warday is now like the head guy on the selection committee. So what do you do about that?
Well, and I also think in terms of, I know Ohio State fans want to see the CFP take away the title or whatever if this all goes to hell. If you do that, if the CFP does that, then they are associated with, they've got this stain on them as well. And it would almost be better for them, easier for them to just be like, if we just ignore it, we don't have the same stain on us. Michigan has not stained us because we're not acknowledging it. If you acknowledge it, then you look and it's like, what's the history of who are the history of the winners of the college football playoffs? And it's like, why does Michigan have, or why does this say no winner in 2023? And it's like, well, now you got to tell you why all of this, and this is why the CFP isn't as pristine as we'd like. Whereas if you just leave it be, eventually people forget about it, and the attention span of us is very, very short. And you're already seeing people tired of talking about this, and it's like, well, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. You can be tired as heck about it, but it still happened, and it's still a thing that is going to have to eventually be resolved. But Steve, as far as vacating the games only to that point, I have to remind you that on his way in this report on Counter Stallion's way out the door, he handed a play sheet to an intern of a future opponent. So anybody want to venture a guess of who that future opponent might be and why it would be very important for Counter Stallions to allegedly hand that over and make sure that it gets into the right hands? I mean,
The one game they had to win.
I mean,
yeah,
that's some easy math. I mean, that's but what would an appropriate punishment? Let me see all the information first.
Yep.
And just for the chat, to clarify what Tony and Steve were talking about, obviously there was that intel that was needed to shut out Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. That's certainly what was required there. Yeah, I'm with you, Tony. I want to know, again, even though it seems completely ridiculous, that as Steve more amusingly displayed and interjected in terms of how this information was relayed, and of course defensive coordinator, whether it was Mike McDonald, Jess Minter, whoever at the time, was just like, there's the Wonder Boy. So we've got our defensive call, but if it needs to change, just look at him. He'll let you know. We don't know where he got it, where it came from.
It looks like
a mastermind.
One of the games where this guy, the new coach, Moore, is like the interim or the acting coach. Maybe the Penn State game, which was like a tremendous breakthrough for them. Looks like the first person he celebrates with at the gun is Connor Stallions. Like, I mean, or maybe I've got the games confused. I don't know, but it looks like they have one of the stations that put a video up of him. It seems like he and Stallions are like hugging one another as soon as the game ended. So go with that wherever you want. I mean, I ordinarily turn around and, if I'm Ryan Day, I'm hugging the guy who is Mark Pantoni's right-hand man in the recruiting office. As soon as the final gun sounds, I am finding that guy and I am hugging him because, forget Mark Pantoni. This guy helped us get all these great players, and that's the guy I'm seeking out. The underling in the recruiting office.
What is the rational Michigan fans' rationale to Stallions being next to Minter and Moore?
Everybody does it.
Show me. We would have won anyway.
We had the better players.
That's fine. You may have, but you still committed this infraction. So
they took the games out of the hands of the talent. I mean, that's what they did.
They've screwed the players on this because they will have that. They will have to carry on the tainted nature of their basically those 3 years of the Counter Stallions era at Michigan. so that's unfortunate for them.
I understand these football programs are not looking to hire choir boys, but to look at Connor Stallion's resume on LinkedIn and other sources that was being circulated right after this scandal broke, it's like, who did they really think that they were bringing on staff here? He just seemed like an unsavory character from the beginning.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I think he knew somebody who knew somebody, and that's kind of how these things are done. I can't speak to what they thought they were getting with him. Yeah, it is kind of weird. I'll say that, but that they mortgaged everything to go with this guy's information, and then lo and behold, this guy's like a savant, and it went on for 18 months or however long it went on. I mean, it'd still be going on today if they hadn't been, outed by somebody. So
it's still funny to me. Like the Big Ten had to warn the rest of the conference, like, hey, you might want to be aware there's this thing going on at Michigan. Like that itself is unprecedented. And how many times can you
just so you know?
Yeah, right. By the way, and the thing is, if Michigan State, I think if I remember the reporting correctly, if they didn't feel comfortable playing, they wouldn't have had to play that game. And it's like that's out. That's generally that's reserved for a pandemic, basically. Like, hey, if you don't want to play, you don't have to. That's the kind of situation that we're talking about there, and unprecedented. And to think that like Jim Harbaugh got suspended for that, but that wasn't his first suspension for an NCAA violation. And really, this last suspension for him wasn't technically NCAA violation. It was the Big Ten code of conduct, sportsmanship type of violation. So like he's violating on several fronts, and to think that now Sharon Moore could be suspended again, which would be his second suspension for a completely separate violation, and you're going to tell me like lack of institutional control isn't a thing, or failure to monitor isn't a thing. Like the amount of stonewalling from people in the program for these things is it's this culture of not following through on NCAA rules that Michigan fans used to have respect for. I don't know what's happened. It's a shame.
I continue to go back to one obvious premise in all this, or in any such situation, there's only one reason to cheat. So I can't get anyone to give me an explanation otherwise of why anyone cheats when they know that they're going to win anyway. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here. Buckeye Weekly, Buckeye Huddle. What's going on over there, Tony?
Yeah, I've been doing a live episode of Buckeye Huddle each day from camp. So we're off today, but there's plenty in there in the feed, recapping what we learned from camp each day and answering questions from the live viewers. So you can find that at all of your podcast platforms of choice. And then Buckeye Huddle just dropped the article on the quarterbacks and wanting to get somebody named here in the next first 2 weeks. And right now, again, I'd put my money on Will Howard, and I think it could happen in that time frame for Ryan Day to actually announce it.
Steve, you're going to be out at practice all week.
Well, that's an interesting thing. We got to watch the last 4 practices the media did because they sold tickets to the fans to be able to watch. It was interesting. They tried to only have us come to the first 2, and then the Columbus Dispatch reporters said to the school, well, we're going to have to buy $50 tickets because, if it's open, we need to come and watch and see what's going on. And the school said, well, you don't have to buy tickets, just come and watch. And so we didn't get to shoot pictures or video the last 2 days, but we did get to watch. It was very insightful. And between Dave Biddle and Patrick Murphy and myself, we filed some reports on everything we saw on bucknuts.com, and I'm sure Tony did on their site and everybody else. And we've done all kinds of radio shows and everything else talking about it. And this week is a little bit different. We're not going to get to go. I think we can go perhaps on Thursday. It's but I'm going to be out of town that day taking my daughter to college, so I'm going to miss that one. But there will be some availability on Thursday. So check our site Thursday. I'm sure we'll have everything. And of course, as Tony said, interviews with quarterbacks tomorrow, a different position group every day this week. And, the rubber's really hitting the road. This is when camp really ramps up. The next 2 weeks is when it becomes a serious thing, really. And this is when jobs are won and lost, and people's lives are changed. You play good football the next 2 weeks, you're set up to be on the field for this upcoming season. If you don't, then you're probably not going to get to play a whole lot this season. So this is when opinions are formed, and we'll see who comes through this next week or two. Looking like they're going to get to play a lot for Ohio State this upcoming season. We're going to be covering all of it there at bucknuts.com.
And winning games is first and foremost. But when you say it like that, Steve, it leads me directly to NFL draft and NFL stardom. Have you ever ran this number, Tony? How many Ohio State, let's say, starters or quasi-starters, what's the percentage of them reaching the NFL?
I did this years and years ago, and so I apologize. I don't have that, but I have done that before. And it fluctuates with the head coach. I'll say that. But in terms of, the one stat I have is every tight end that Ohio State has signed since 1996 that hasn't changed positions or retired or left, transferred, has received an NFL paycheck.
Wow.
So pretty good.
That's pretty good hit rate.
Yeah.
And that is not necessarily a position people would bring up as being a strong suit.
And that may just be practice squad or whatever, but like and maybe now it's direct deposit, but they have gotten paid from the NFL. And it's, if you are starting at Ohio State, you are going to, it's the rare ones that don't at least get a camp invite. Like Mayan Williams, because his knee was wrecked, has still not, I think, been invited. But if you start at Ohio State, you'll be on an NFL field at least for the first 2 weeks of practice, and then it's up to you to stay there.
Good stuff. As has been noted many times in the chat, great show, guys. Thanks for the analysis. You guys are the best. Tony, follow him at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And, of course, the Buckeye Weekly podcast drops several times a week. Steve at Bucknuts247 Sports. Guys, have a great week at practice, and we will see you back here sometime next week.
All right, guys. Take care.